Hi class. Today I'm going to introduce the registration system that we will be using for our project 3, the reduction relief print. There's going to be a lot more information about what a reduction relief print is and how to do it and how to plan, because planning is a big part of this process. But today I'm going to focus on the registration system that we're going to use to make sure that each layer aligns very well with the next layer, which is an important part of making a reduction relief print properly. The biggest thing to know about a reduction relief print before I get started is that you're going to use the same blocks to print all of the layers. It's kind of magical. So we're going to be focusing on 2 blocks. Here I have my 1 carved sample and an uncarved sample, but you'll start with 2 fresh blocks. And I decided for my print that I'm going to align them side by side, and they're going to print side by side together as one large image. But you can decide how you want to arrange your blocks. Maybe you want one long landscape image, which will bleed to the edge of the 9x12 paper that we're going to use. I'll get to that in a second. Maybe you want to have a diptych of two blocks that sit together but have some space in between, so they might be related but not a full continuation of the same image. You might want to go crazier, get some offset, get some vertical and horizontal on the same space, same image. So that's your decision. Whatever you decide, the next steps are going to be the same, just though you'll cut them to your image. So we're going to create a jig. Oops. Oh no, I revealed my jig. We're going to create a jig for keeping our plates in the spots that they need to be, and so that we'll place them consistently in those spots each time, and we'll align our paper the same way each time. So I've marked out the outer edge of my paper, which will be 9x12. We're still going to work with our quarter sheets from our large paper, and we will be doing this print as an exchange portfolio, meaning that each of you will print enough of these so that everybody in your group gets one, plus me. And so I'm getting ahead of myself, but it means that everybody needs to print on 9x12 paper, so we all have a consistent addition, a consistent portfolio. Now, my 2 blocks aligned with one another in the configuration that I want will make them 6 inches tall by 8 inches wide. I know this. And I decided to create a consistent border around the whole thing. So that means I have 2 inches on these sides, because 2 plus 2 plus 8 equals 12. 4 plus 8 equals 12. And then in this direction, it was a 1.5 inch margin, because it's a 9 inches minus 6 inches minus 1.5 minus 1.5 to get that even spacing. Again, whatever configuration you decide, if you want to have your blocks at the bottom of your page, a line at the bottom, however you want them, you can put them wherever you want. Either trace your blocks where you want them to go, or what I did was actually I measured and I made marks, and then I cut where those marks were. So the next step will be to cut a space using an X-Acto or a box cutter against a metal ruler. Again, always keep your thumb out of the path of the knife blade. Very common injury. And again, just go all around until you reveal the space where your blocks will sit. Now you want to make sure, and I'm still kind of working on this with mine, you want to make sure that with the corrugations that your blocks are going to fit properly and sit flat. So you don't want them to be resting on any of the cardboard edges, but you also want to make sure that they're tightly aligned. You know, they fit tightly within this space so that they can't move. They can't move. Once they're locked in, and they aren't going to go anywhere. And that's the jig. That's the jig system for this registration. The next part of this registration is making sure that you know exactly where your paper should be placed each time. So in our previous registration system, we basically would just use this outline and kind of align it and then put the paper down, and that works. But again, we're trying to get a slightly more precise system to make sure that each time we're putting a specific piece of paper down on this jig, it's going to be in the exact same spot as the last time we put it on there, and that's going to create a lot less frustration as we build the layers of our reduction print. So to do that, we're going to do what's called a T&bar method, and that basically means, I'm actually going to remove my plates because they're adding a little bit of extra volume. So the T&bar method is a way of marking the back of the paper to align with your jig or your registration system. So I want to be really careful, or I want to make sure that I'm putting 2 lines on the main side of where I'm going to lay my paper down first. And then I'm going to put 1 line on the opposite side. And then this is, you know, a little bit up to you, putting a line on each of the other sides or multiple lines on each of the other sides. So I placed these lines randomly, no measuring. And that's part of the beauty of this system, is that the randomness of my markings will ensure that it's like a key code that ensures that I'm putting this paper down in the right spot each time. So like, for example, here I have it aligned on the my left side, but it's not aligned on this other side. And that means I know that before I put my paper down, I've got to bring this back so that I get everything working. And so having those lines on all sides ensures that you're going to put it down in the same spot every time. And I would actually recommend not making this really big Sharpie outline because that's actually breaking my line. Anyway, that's a minor point. So I've done it to 1 sheet. Now I have to do it to every single sheet that I'm going to be using in my edition. And we are going to set an edition number of 20 sheets. You'll understand that more as we work through this process. But so now this is the next sheet, and I'm going to make sure the first one was kind of random, and now I have to make sure that these other ones, every other sheet has these same markings in the same spot, and I'm being really careful. So again, each time I place this sheet, maybe it's an 1/8 inch over compared to where I placed the last sheet, but it'll always line up with these lines the same. So I'll always know that each sheet is sitting precisely where it needs to. And so before you print any of your sheets, you want to put these markings on every single one of your sheets. And that just ensures that each time you will have an accurate registration for your reduction print. Okay. Now, to prepare our cardboard, we're gonna send it over to David.
All right, guys, so we have the jig that we need to have a really accurate registration system to position the blocks as well as the paper. But we have a slight issue. The issue is that the thickness of the cardboard is very close to the thickness of the plate itself. And we don't want the cardboard to transfer any kind of impression onto the paper. So for that, we're going to crush the cardboard. And to do that, we're gonna simply take the jig, which has already been measured, cut, and registered, and we're gonna use our blue press. So we have been doing some testings, and we figured that the right amount of pressure to crush your registration jig is gonna be only a quarter of a turn up on the pressure of the press. So I'm gonna simply going to set my registration jig down. No paper, no blankets. Obviously I'm gonna make sure that this is clean, and I'm gonna make sure that the press itself is clean as well. But what we want is for the cardboard to get crushed by the pressure to making it thinner. So after I have double checked my pressure and I have a clear path for cranking my press, I'm gonna start giving it a spin. So little by little, once it catches, it should go. So I ended up running this back and forth a few times. I would like run it once, check on it, check the thickness of it. And I did it like maybe like 2-3 times. It depends. Some of you guys might be using a slightly different cardboard that might be softer or tougher. It might be thicker or thinner. So it'll be up to each scenario for you guys to look into how many times it needs to run through in order to have the right thickness. So now that I have run this through it, you guys can clearly see that the jig has been flattened, and it's great because that means that now the cardboard itself is not going to interfere with the actual printing process, and now it's all good to go. So with my jig that is ready to be used, my plates and my paper, I can start my edition.